What's up, everybody? We are live. It's verdict time. Let's get into it. Here we go.
All right, welcome to the seat. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict as the number 4 person.
Yes, we do.
Ma'am, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, we have.
Is the verdict unanimous?
Yes, it is.
Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? I need to check it, make sure it's in proper form. Thank you. All right, the verdict appears to be in proper form. Madam Clerk, would you please publish the verdict?
In the Circuit Court of the 12th Judicial Circuit in Fort Manatee County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Ashley Benefield, case number 2020 CF 3014. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense. Did Ashley Benefield actually carry a firearm? Yes. Did Ashley Benefield discharge a firearm? Yes. Did Ashley Benefield, as a result of discharging a firearm, cause death to Douglas Benefield? Yes. So say we all this 30th day of July, 2024 at Bradenton, Manatee County, Florida. Cheryl Forkerson.
Would either side like the jury polled? State?
No.
Defendants?
Yes, sir.
Members of the jury, you're now going to be polled. The clerk is going to ask each of you individually if this is your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole. Madam Clerk?
Juror number 15, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 20, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror 21, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 29, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 33, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
And juror number 35, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Thank you. Members of the jury, I want to thank you for your time and consideration in this case. I know that many of you have missed important work obligations and family obligations and other engagements that you had planned, as well as time with your families. But I want to thank you for being willing to give us your time and your attention and being observant to this entire trial and serving as jurors and doing your civic duty. I have paperwork that we're going to give you that will reflect your service as a juror, as well as a piece of paper from the clerk's office documenting that each of you has been here for these number of days if you need it for work purposes. If you need some sort of other paperwork for work or anything like that, contact my judicial assistant and we'll be able to get that for you. I also want to advise you of some very special privileges that all jurors enjoy. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak with anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. Bless you. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror or not. Again, on behalf of myself, the entire judges of the 12th Circuit, thank you very much for your time and your attention during this trial. I now discharge you as jurors in this case and release you from any further obligations in this matter. You're free to go. Make sure you pick up your electronic devices. And please make sure that your notes stay with the deputy. They're going to be returned to me. They will be destroyed. No one will ever read your notes. Thank you. All right, you all can have a seat. The jury is out. State.
Judge, I would ask you to remand the defendant at this point. I believe she has a right to a PSI for sentencing, so I'm not sure if she would waive that or proceed with that.
Do you want to PSI?
I think we'd prefer to have PSI.
I'll sign an order tonight for that. It's a late in the evening. My judicial assistant will reach out to both of you tomorrow to begin coordinating a hearing, sentencing hearing. You can let her know how much time you need. Right now, the pre-sentence investigations are running a month to 6 weeks, so it'll certainly, the time for sentencing will be outside of that, but then you can let me know how much time you'll need.
Let me direct myself, Your Honor, to post-trial release if I can.
Yes, sir.
Under Youngston, I know that Younghans, rather, I know that the court is familiar with the standard. They stated in no uncertain terms, but if taken in good faith on grounds not frivolous but fairly debatable in view of the decisions of the Supreme Court, then the petitioner should be admitted to bail. And they set out for the trial court 3 factors. The first, with respect to the appeal not being frivolous, I think by the court's own acknowledgement at 2 different points in the trial, the court noted that we were dealing with novel issues that the court had not seen before. I think we certainly have good and sufficient grounds to appeal in good faith. The factors, according to Younghans, Your Honor, is the habits of the individual as respect for the law. Ms. Benefield has no prior history of criminal activity, as the court knows. Her local attachments to the community by way of family ties, business, or investments. She lives here in Bradenton, has lived here for a while. Her mother resides here. Her child resides here. The severity of the punishment imposed for the offense, that is substantial. There's no denying it. And any other circumstance relevant to the question of whether the person would be tempted to remove herself from the jurisdiction of the court. Ms. Benefield, on every single occasion over the course of the life of this case, has appeared when requested. She has never once failed to meet any obligation pursuant to the bond that she's on. As a result, we ask that the court entertain setting a post-trial bond. The only other thing that the court noted in the Younghans decision was that it's axiomatic that the exercise of judicial discretion should never be arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable, and where the discretion is exercised in favor of denying to a person a basic and fundamental right, the reasons for doing so should be sound and they should be clearly stated. So pursuant to Rule 3.691, post-trial release, Your Honor, we ask that the court admit Ms. Benefield to bond, continue her on the same bond, in fact. And if the court is not inclined to do so, we ask that Your Honor stay the decision so that we can appeal directly to the second district. As the court knows, it's an accelerated docket because of the nature of the motion, that is to say, the bond.
Thank you. State, did you want to be heard?
Judge, I object to any bond at this point. The potential sentence is 30 years. While this defendant may have appeared at every court hearing. She was not convicted of the charge at the time. She has much more, so at stake at this point, being convicted of this crime, and I would ask you to deny bond.
In rebuttal.
No, sir.
Ms. Benefield, the jury, having found you guilty of manslaughter with a firearm, are going to remand you to the custody of the Manatee County Sheriff. We're going to revoke your bonds where you'll be held pending sentencing.
She's been out on bond basically this whole time. She comes to trial today thinking it's going to be rebuttal and probably closings. Probably didn't think they were going to get a verdict today. Probably didn't think they were going to be deliberating till 11 o'clock at night. And now all of a sudden, bond is revoked. You're a convicted felon. By the way, manslaughter without a firearm, if there was no firearm, 15 years is the max. With a firearm, 30 years is the max. Let me just hit all these questions real quick. This is a lesser included charge. She is guilty of manslaughter, not second degree. Is this the first time the chat has been wrong? No, it's the second time the chat has been wrong, but this is the first time the chat has been overwhelmingly wrong. And I got to be honest, I agreed with the chat and how I would vote, but it's hard to realize when you're not sitting in the room. And again, talking about the pictures and do we believe her? And we're watching through a screen. And to me, to vote guilty of manslaughter, there's no other way around it, but the jury just didn't believe her. And I think that's what it comes down to. But we're going to play another clip from earlier tonight that's going to give us some context onto where my mind is going and my initial thought. Yes, the firearm makes a big difference. Up to 15 years is the max. We still need to decide sentencing. Yes. A PSI is a pre-sentence investigation where they look into her background, ties to the community, any prior crimes. They make recommendations as to what they think her sentence should be. Are you as shocked as us? I wouldn't say I'm shocked. I am surprised, but not shocked. I'm barely surprised, I would say. But more coming on that later. So no, 9 to 15 years would be on just normal manslaughter. Somewhere between 15 and 30 years is what I would expect. So Leslie, my guess would be somewhere between 15 and 30 years. I'd like to see the pre-sentence investigation if it was there or if it's available. And let's jump to earlier in the night when we had our second question from the jury. This was an hour and 15 minutes ago. Okay. Hour and 15 minutes ago, this happened. And we're going to take a listen to it together. Jury question, 5.5 hours. What are we doing here?
We're back on the record in State of Florida versus Ashley Benefield, 2020 CF 3014. I had another communication from the jury. I'm going to read it verbatim and then I'll hear from both sides. Unable to come to unanimous verdict. Signed, juror.
An hour and 14 minutes ago, they said, we're unable to come to unanimous verdict. It's over. We're done. We've been deliberating for 5.5 hours. We're done. Hot Honey said she feels like when they couldn't reach a unanimous decision, it was on which charge. The first question they asked gave it away. First question they asked felt like it could have gone either way, but it definitely felt like there were some people that didn't believe Ashley Benefield. This makes me think there were some people that felt not guilty, some people that felt guilty. That's usually what a unanimous verdict means, but you could be right as well. Which leads me to believe my first inclination after hearing an hour ago that there was a hung jury, basically, they couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. And then an hour later, we have a verdict. I said to myself, it's probably going to be manslaughter. They probably compromised. The defense attorney even said in his closing, don't compromise. We don't want to compromise. But when you got people on both sides and you maybe think the judge won't, let you stop till you come to a decision. They didn't want to go home and come back tomorrow. So they said compromise. I mean, that's the most likely outcome, but Hot Honey could be right too. Maybe they were disagreeing on the charge, and the people that wanted second degree were like, all right, whatever, we'll just do manslaughter. That could very well be true as well. I don't understand. It seems like a miscarriage of justice, just like Karen Reed, Casey Anthony, so disappointed in our justice system. I mean, this is why we have juries, right? They have to make a call. Who do they believe? Do they believe Ashley Benefield or do they not? Rachel Moss, thank you for your time. Hey, we said we were going to try to do this. If it came tonight, I was just getting into bed. I'm pretty tired. Hit the like button if you guys haven't already. Hit the like button for popping on to do the verdict. But I also always think it's interesting. What do lawyers say when they hear the jury is deadlocked? Who seems like the more confident lawyer? So we're watching this in 2020, but let's take a listen to what the lawyers argue after this.
That's an easy one. It's been less than 6 hours. Keep working. But with this caveat, Your Honor, I think you should at least acknowledge to them, because I don't know that either out of politeness or a sense of intimidation, I don't know that they know they can ask if they can go home and come back in the morning.
Judge, and I think asking them about going home and coming back is definitely something they also need to Allen charge before we make any decisions after that.
I've given Allen charge after 6 hours.
Yeah, well, just go ahead and say your piece.
Judge, I didn't realize that there was any.
So again, seems like the defense was more confident in this case than the prosecution. Turned out not to be the case. And by the way, in case anybody's wondering, this is a home run win for the prosecutor in this case. They've got to be more than happy about this with the amount of evidence they have, the issues with the investigation. They've got to be more than happy with this result. And they feel they've gotten justice for the victim in their case and his family. And you saw the reaction of Doug Benefield's daughter and family when the verdict was read.
Any hour attached to an Allen charge. I just thought that once they said they were deadlocked, that we give them the Allen charge. But it is almost 10 o'clock, so they may want to go home and come back tomorrow.
All right, thank you both very much. As we all know, the Allen charge is a one-time thing. So my inclination was to bring them out, acknowledge that they've been working for almost 6 hours, well over 5.5 hours, acknowledge the time of the evening, and give them that option. And I'm not going to ask for them to vote. The way I do this is I'll explain to them, you've been working, we acknowledge that, it's late. If you want, you can go home for the evening, come back tomorrow fresh, and continue your deliberations. I send them back to decide if that's what they want to do or not, and then go from there.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, bring them out.
Received a note from you. It says unable to come to unanimous verdict. We all recognize that you've been working for almost 6 full hours, and it's getting late. It's almost 10 o'clock in the evening. I want you to go back, and there's an option that we can come back tomorrow and start fresh in the morning. I do have some court first thing in the morning, but we can get started same as every other day about 9 o'clock. So I'm going to ask you to step in the back and make a decision amongst yourselves if you'd like to come back tomorrow morning fresh to start.
Or there's no other option.
I need you to discuss that first, please.
A juror asks,
Or there's no other option.
I need you to discuss that.
is there another option or is this the only option? Something like that. And it certainly seems like she is asking, is it the only option for us to either go home or stay here? Do we not have the option to just be deadlocked? Not really sure. Judge didn't answer, said, you guys have to go discuss it out there and then come back and tell us what your decision is.
First, please.
Or there's no other option.
I need you to discuss that first, please. All right, you all have a seat.
Can't hear if they said anything else. I don't know when they eventually came back. You see.
So we'll be in recess until we get another question or.
I don't know if you.
All right, the response from the jury is we will stay. Signed by a juror. So we'll be in recess until we get another question or a verdict.
That's right. Thank
It
you.
was way less than an hour, actually. So by the time they said they will stay to when they came back with a verdict was like 40 minutes. So they were at odds, basically deadlocked. And then 40 minutes later, they come with a guilty on the lesser included. I also, Squid, hate lesser included. I think it's totally unfair. I think you're the state. You have all the resources. You should choose what you think you can win on, the highest one you think you can win on, and go with that. And if you can't prove it, too bad. This is America. That's how I feel, but that's not how the law is. Can a PSI take DV into account and say less time? Yes, they can take her background, all sorts of things into account, but it's not going to be a low number. Julie, how with the expert testimony did they find her guilty? Hung jury about as an hour ago. The hung jury thing is wild to me, but it's very clear and easy to see how they found her guilty, right? If we're going to think about this and be logical, right? They found her guilty because they just did not believe her testimony. And whether that was because of the corroborating or lack of corroborating evidence, was it the picture didn't match up with him hitting her like she said? Did they find her to be manipulative? Did they think there were no actual tears? Whatever it was, I don't see another answer but for we just didn't believe her as the jury. Because if you believed how she explained it, I think it's an easy not guilty verdict. Was this live just now? They deliberated until almost 11 p.m.? Yes, Mega. I'm heartbroken. How can any rational juror, given the history of Doug Benefield and the evidence presented in this case, convict her? A couple different ways, right? Maybe they believe the prosecution's argument that happened in the past and she was fine now and she shouldn't have been afraid. Maybe they thought she was lying in wait and just set it all up and had the firearm ready and just sent her mom and daughter away and did the deed. James said I was at not guilty till she testified. Yeah, I think that's plausible, right? B&B said, is it bad? I'm happy about the verdict. I mean, I'm never happy no matter what verdict, right? Whether I think the jury got it right or got it wrong or voted like I did, it's always just like a sad situation. I shouldn't say I'm never happy with a verdict. In criminal cases, it just is, it's hard to bring joy into the situation, even in cases where it's a big win and everybody's on the same page, because you still think about the victim. You still think about the fact that it doesn't bring back Doug Benefield to his family. And you think about Emerson now lost a mom and a dad. It's really sad, you know? So, but I get it that you think justice was served. I hope the jurors will share their verdict process. I would love to hear kind of what they were thinking. Typical to have them deliberate this late on day one. So a lot of times in Florida, they'll let them deliberate as long as they will in state court. I would say this is later than usual, but if they want to stay and they want to work, usually we'll allow it as, you know, judges and lawyers. Can the judge give her probation or does he have to serve jail time? Let's wait and let's look into all the minimums and maximums and the PSI stuff when that continues to come out. I agree with you, Peter, on juries, but what bothers me is making choices to have a means to an end, not necessarily actual justice. This hurts. Law Watcher, thanks for your insights. Thanks for your questions and your comments. Welcome, Hot Honey, to the membership crew. Layla, those that believe not guilty, he had no weapon. She shot 4 times, bullets in the body. How many of us DV survivors have killed our abusers? Take all my money, lawyer, you know. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are situations where this is self-defense. And it does happen. And people do this to their abuser. There was another trial in Florida not long ago in Orlando where a lady did get off for somewhat similar circumstances. The state also said manslaughter was just if she shot him and he was shot at the end. So you're saying they kind of minimize the burden? I'm not sure. Jennifer, can they appeal can they appeal and get bail bond? They can definitely appeal. The judge denied the bail and the bond. They will definitely appeal. And I think a lot of it will come down to the prosecutor's closing argument. I think there were some issues there. Rat Terrier, no credit for time served since she was out on bond. Correct. I don't know if she did serve time, but yeah, if she's not serving it, usually you don't get credit for that. What time did they return the verdict? Close to 5? No, they returned the verdict like 10 minutes ago. Just happened. Why do I feel so disappointed she was found guilty? If you think it was an injustice, right? If you feel happy about it, you think justice was served, unhappy about an injustice. Reese's mom, I think it's BS that the state can add lesser charges when they know they didn't prove the original charge. So in Florida, it's almost always allowed. It's just we know the lesser includeds are going to be on there. Appellate issues with this case? Yeah, I think there are. I think the prosecutors did misstate some of the evidence. I think the judge kept out a couple things that maybe, are arguable, but I don't see any humongous, fundamental, obvious errors where I'm like, this is going to get overturned. I think it has the normal appellate chance of less than 10%. I would never want only 6 people deciding my fate, Brooke. That's a fair point. Mary C., our judicial system needs an overhaul. Media, social media corruption, increasing human bias contribute to a flawed system. That's why jury selection is so important, to discuss this stuff, get it out there, see what the jury knows, what they don't know, what they believe, what they don't believe. To be honest, I do not believe her, but my heart is broken for the daughter as she is now a victim, as she has now lost both parents. Yep, I agree. It's really, really sad. Jury got this wrong, both awful women on the prosecutors. Middleman podcast, I was not guilty until I heard the prosecution closing argument. Then I saw their whole picture. Okay, that's interesting. Anna Lee, this was the right verdict. Yeah, it was really interesting. After closing, the guilty votes almost doubled in percentage. Daybreak, Dominique Dunn's murderer spent 2.5 years in prison. If she had a gun, she'd be alive, but in prison. Double trend, a compromise verdict is just as bad as prosecution that doesn't stand by justice. This proves testifying causes more damage. It can, but if this is your defense, sometimes it's hard to connect all the dots if you don't testify. B&B, if she does 15 years, she'll be out in 47, 48 years. She'll be fine. Not sad at all for her. She's alive. We'll get to see Emerson. Doug is dead. Okay. Welcome to all the new members here. I was on Ashley Benefield's side until the prosecution put it all together. Along with that, I just wasn't convinced by her testimony. It's truly sad all the way around. My heart breaks for everyone in this case. This was a toxic relationship, and there's no one who won here. Both kids, both mom and dad. Thank you, Bobby, for the super sticker. The defense couldn't prove self-defense simple, and Aslan, that's one of the problems. They didn't have to prove it, right? They did not have the burden to prove self-defense, but if that's how the jury felt, then maybe that's why they got here. Tammy, no tears can be caused by meds, autoimmune disorders, and neurodiversity. They need to stop being able to argue it as a sign of guilt. Those can be explained as well. Deseringu, it wasn't a capital offense. So in Florida, that's 6 jurors, 12 for a capital offense, meaning death penalty. Super bummed. AB seems sort of sketch, but the prosecutor, in my opinion, did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, what's next, Pita? You guys tell me what's next. But I will say her reaction was kind of stoic and almost very surprising to me. Jinx, do you think it may have gone different if the judge sent them home considering the late time? No, I don't think so. It's hard for me to, pontificate and guess on that stuff, but I don't think so. I didn't believe her, but I feel so sad. If she is a victim, I'm heartbroken. Are there any DV cases where the defendant gets off? Yes. There was one in Florida, I think a year or two ago that we kind of watched, but didn't fully go into it. Joy, he was trouble, but so was she. I don't believe she killed out of fear. Didn't realize the feed was live. Never heard of jury deliberating so late. Yeah, Vivian, wild, right? It's wild. In Florida. Jill, welcome. Jennifer, thanks, Peter. Why only 6 jurors? Because it wasn't a capital offense. Jessica, I feel horrible for this woman. I dealt with a man like this for 15 years. His family was law enforcement. He took my kids and never was, I believed. That is a sad part, right? I mean, you don't want him to get arrested if he didn't do anything wrong, but the fact that you make an accusation or call the cops, and if an arrest wasn't made, now that's used against you as you must be lying. I don't like that either. They should have filed charges against her for filing a false police report if they really thought she lied and made all this up, then it would make sense. Some change from not guilty to guilty after she took the stand. Do you think she took the stand bad for her? I don't. I think that I'll just say my personal opinion. I think it would have been hard for the defense to win if she didn't take the stand, but obviously if I wanted to, act like I know it all, I'd be like, well, they lost. So maybe obviously it would have been better if she didn't take the stand, but we don't know that. And I didn't think immediately she blew it on the stand, which sometimes you do with defendants. It's hard to feel great about justice system with a decision like this. Surely very few people in the chat thought it was manslaughter. Compromise decision just didn't seem like real justice. Yeah, I saw somebody talk about Hot Pocket every time they see the judge. That was pretty funny. Peter, do you think she should appeal? Absolutely. Do you think she will win? I don't. And again, I'm not a rocket scientist. It's just most appeals don't win. I'm not saying she's innocent, but the state did not prove their case. If a state can't prove a case, there shouldn't be lesser charges included as a consolation prize when they hold all the power. It's wrong. These arguments are being made, just so you know. Becky Z, since the defense didn't object during closing, can they appeal because of prosecution misstatement during closing? They probably will try that, and it'll be up to the appellate court if they're like, you waived it by not objecting. But lots of times lawyers still try to make arguments like that retroactively. I just don't think shooting 4 times in self-defense, she had eliminated the danger, so why keep shooting? Well, she didn't eliminate the danger with the first 2 shots, I think. And the defense's theory is she was scared and just kind of firing off. But, I mean, again, if that's the reason you want to use to convict, I get it. And the jury picks different reasons all the time. I know the law, but that's how the jury sees things. Aslan, this is a great comment because those are not always the same 2 things, right? Your point is well taken. Squid, I personally think that because the state decided to charge their entire theory of the case and, change it to a different motive and ended the case then and there, that's shady, even if you think she's guilty. A lot of times, state attorneys do things other lawyers could never. Sonny, can AI replace jury duty? Is there any studies? Oof. Would you want to put your life? Look, go watch Minority Report, right? Again, she wasn't heard. Kat, I liked the prosecutors. They deserved credit. Guilty. No tears during testimony. A court watcher told Melanie that AB had tears streaming down her face. Again, different perspectives. This was the only chat that leaned not guilty. Interesting. Uhtred, can you cover Donna Adelson notes next? I don't know what you mean by notes, but when her trial happens, absolutely. Rachel Moss, if a juror interviews that they were not guilty, but they were tired and they all compromised, is that a valid reason or a problem? That would be tough. I mean, potentially a valid reason that they would have to discuss, but they all were polled and they all said that was their verdict. So I think it'd be tough. Hot Honey, Peter, do you think the officer that unalive Sonia Massey will be televised? Will you cover that, please? So I don't know much about that. I don't know much about that one. But how we pick our next case is just like this one. I knew nothing about it. You guys threw it out there and enough of you asked for it, and that's how we got here. Gut feeling about sentence, what's the range? 15 to 30 years would be my guess. Thinking from Whitney, thanks for joining the membership crew. And thanks for the super chat. The jury got it right. Listen, I never try to act like I know beyond a reasonable doubt what a jury's going to do. I've been wrong. This is not the first time I've been wrong about how I think a trial is going to go. It's not the first time a jury has voted differently than I would vote. It happens. And I can't say I don't trust the system or I hate the jury or I hate the lawyers or if it turns out this way. To me, I try to trust the system as well as I can. I don't feel like there was like corruption in this case. I feel like the jury just didn't believe her, and that is part of the system, and it's a vital part of the system. Azam, thanks for gifting a membership. Meaning no offense, but do you think your opinion was impacted by her? At the end of the day, her telling events were off, and she had no DV evidence. I disagree with you, and I do think that where I was at was impacted by her, but I think it was more impacted by the state's lack of evidence, in my opinion. But I do think that her story was plausible. I wasn't like, wow, I absolutely believe her. It's all perfect. It all lines up. But I don't hold the defense to a burden to prove self-defense. In my opinion, I know lawyers have their own styles. These 2 ladies, I did not like their style at all. Seemed like tag team bullies. Shore Life Creations, I don't know the correct wording, but did the prosecution make reference to Taylor being brought up on some sort of charges or being admonished? The judge said that would be done later. So yeah, they asked for him to be sanctioned, not in front of the jury. Basically because they said he violated a court order. In cases like this, is a bench trial better? Desering, almost no lawyers will say that a bench trial is better in situations like this. The ME should have convinced all those saying not guilty. Uncivil said, I was a vote for guilty, didn't believe her. And at the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to, right? If you don't believe her, you're probably going to vote guilty. Peter Ortiz, her testimony was her downfall, not believable. Cat Yard, Peter, you need mods. We have mods, but not everybody, has the same definition of what needs to be moderated. I try to allow disagreement and I try to allow reasoning for it. If it's, trolling and spamming, we'll, kick people out for that. But I try to allow disagreement as much as I can. Isn't that a bad part of the system, though? Someone goes away for 30 years. There's a legitimate dispute as to whether or not the case was even proven. I mean, you say legitimate dispute, but 6 people that didn't know her all agreed. So, while I don't necessarily agree with them, and maybe the chat doesn't, that's how the system is set up. But I get your objection. Mary, I don't believe all women, but I believed her. Very disappointed. Prosecution did not prove their case. Anyone that doesn't like the verdict, go back and watch the stand your ground hearing. What did the prosecution say that was wrong in closing? I think they misstated a couple facts and the way that they described some of the testimony. That's not how I remember it coming out. I haven't gone back and double checked it. And the defense didn't object. Judd, why was it the jurors' choice to not break? Could this be considered rushed? Feels the jurors want it out. Could this be wrong? What are your thoughts? Could it be wrong? Sure. But it's not unusual for judges and lawyers to allow jurors to deliberate, I'll say in Florida, late if they want to. What about the JOA? The judge didn't rule on it yet. I thought the judge did rule on the JOA and denied it, but I could be wrong. Do you think the DNA would have helped? I don't. I really don't. Layla B. I do not like the prosecutors either, but the escalation on D day, according to her, made no rational sense to me. Azam, Peter, don't take this the wrong way. This is the first time I feel you've seemed biased. You're pro-defense this time. So this is one of the easiest cases for me to completely disagree with you. I don't know where my bias would come from. I don't know anybody involved. I knew nothing about this case. I literally was just taking it as like, yeah, that seems plausible by the defense, but it more comes down to I just don't think the prosecutor proved it. And that's where I stand. That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean you have to stand there. That doesn't mean the jury does. It's just my view of the case. Thanks to the late night live. Prosecutors were too aggressive for me. Please cover Sonia Massey. All good. You can't read the jurors' minds. Right. Absolutely. What would she have had to show in order to obtain a concealed carry in Florida? It depends on the timing of when she did. So I don't know. I'm not going to dive into that. I'm not happy with the verdict, but the jurors are the ultimate deciders of fact. It is still the best system. I do agree. Netwoman, can she appeal if they find out the jury was influenced by things that were said in closing statements by the prosecutor that were not admitted during trial? Thank you again for always teaching and spending your time with the chat. You know. So if a juror comes out and gets interviewed and says that affected their verdict and they go back and find out it was a misstatement, potentially, but that would be unusual and not something that happens a ton. Anna, Peter, love the grind. I do not think you have been biased at all. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. Some cases, maybe like I start to lean early. This case, I was just like, listen to the whole prosecutor's case in chiefing before she testified. And I was like, I just don't see the proof there. But then once she testified, I knew it was just going to come down to whether or not they believed her. Rarely able to join live. Thank you, Peter, for always breaking down the law for us as it applies to the trials. Grateful. Can't wait for Eva to speak for sentencing. Justice was served. I'm sure she will. And I'm sure it will be impactful. Because at this point, she's guilty. Doug Benefield's the victim. She's the guilty defendant. And that's how the judge is going to listen to the victim impact statements. Discussing if people so comfortably judging with no proof. I'm disappointed in humanity. It's a sad day for DV. Listen, we have to be fair, right? And if the proof wasn't enough for some people to vote guilty, it was enough for this jury. So to say there was no proof, I'm not sure is a fair representation of, the trial either. Allah. How do you as a defense attorney feel when their client is found guilty and taken away to prison? How do you deal with your emotions? It's tough, but what we do is we always prepare them. This could happen. Be ready. Prepare for the worst. Hope for the best. It's part of a lawyer's job to prepare clients. And we've had this happen to us before where they're taken from being out on bond to go to jail that day. Everybody believes in the justice system until it doesn't work in their favor. I get that. And I'm hopefully I'm not being like that, right? I'm trying to not be like that as an example as well. State didn't prove their case. Makes me sad. Whitney, hitting a dog and emotional abuse is not justification for premeditated murder. I don't understand the not guilty voters at all. Encourage people to research what wasn't let in now. All right. I got to go. I'm tired. It's late. I appreciate you guys all joining me. This was an interesting one for discussion as well. So, let's continue the discussion. Let me know what cases you guys are following next, and we will get to it. But that's all we got for tonight. So hit the like button if you don't mind. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.